Hey, this is Shaun with the Atlanta Tennis Podcast, powered by GoTennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And if you're a fan of Bull Shark Sports, go to shop.letsgotennis.com. Get yourself a hoodie or a hat. And while you're there, check out the Atlanta Tennis Monsters collection just in time for Halloween. Today, this is Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hestley. Today, Coach Ben is asking the question, is being left-handed actually an advantage in sport? Ben, you ready to talk youth sports?
Yeah, let's dive into this one.
All right, today Coach Ben wants to discuss lefties. So, Ben, do you have any experience here?
I have a little bit of experience. As a fellow lefty myself. I've got both life experience as well as sports experience being a left-handed person. So I was sort of brought to this. This came to my mind about when I saw you and Justin's 10 Minutes of Tennis episode on Rafa Nadal's retirement and what that meant, and the fact that he was a left-handed player, um, and what that meant, and is there an advantage to being left-handed? So that just sparked my interest as a fellow lefty myself in several conversations I've had over the years with people, and the, shall I say, advantages, if you will, of being left-handed.
So this can go as far as soccer, being left-footed, that's fine too. Basketball, any sport, we can ask this question. Now, I've got expertise in tennis, as do you. You've got some extra expertise in baseball. The rest of the sports we just like to talk about because it's fun or we use them as examples. So I will start with when I was a kid playing soccer. It was really a great advantage for my little travel elite soccer team. We thought we were good, where I was the righty at striker and we had a lefty striker. The cool thing is we were both named Shaun. I think that was important too. But we had a lefty Shaun and a righty Shaun, and in both cases we could either play on the right side or left side respectively, or switch and change things differently. In soccer, I don't know that it's an advantage. Maybe soccer and basketball are the same. Am I more likely to go one direction or the other?
I think if you are truly one-way dominant, and I will use basketball. I have more experience in basketball than soccer. I will say that when I coached my son's 5-year-old soccer team, although I have very little, if none, experience in soccer, one of the objectives I came up with, just being a youth sports coach and advocate for multi-sport athleticism and things like that, is that we made the kids practice with kicking the ball with the left hand, or sorry, with the left foot and with the right foot. And like our number one objective for these 5-year-olds was that by the end of the season, you could at least kick the ball with your right foot and kick the ball with your left foot. In basketball, there's lots of examples. While there's very few true left-handed shooters, um, there are advantages in being able to play on both sides of the body. I'll give you a quick example. When I was in middle school, I remember, here's a story for you. I was in middle school and I was going out for the middle school basketball team, this basketball team for the school. And a lot of us had come from, we played church league basketball as youth athletes. We'd played rec ball, travel ball wasn't a thing back then. So in my little hometown of about 10,000 people, we had a pretty decent little populace of basketball players, or kids that could play, decent basketball. So we thought. And so we get to tryouts. We all go to the same middle school. And so even though I grew up in a small town, it was a big school because everyone went to the same school. And so we go to tryouts. It's seventh and eighth graders, and there's like 40 of us trying out. And coach is like, okay, we're only going to have one team because we only have enough coaches for one team, and we're going to pick basically the 12 best players, 12 or 13 best players, whatever. And so his criteria he comes up with, is this is probably in his mind, like, how do I decipher between these 40 kids who are all pretty decent athletes and all, relatively okay at basketball. So his criteria was this: if you can do a layup on the right side of the basket with your right hand and a layup on the left side of the basket with your left hand, you make the team.
That was it.
And we're like, okay. And in what was crazy is how many kids couldn't do it, myself included. I am
Really?
so left hand dominant. I mean, I'm so left hand dominant, Shaun, to the point that my parents were worried I would never be able to drive a car because you have to use your right foot, and definitely never be able to use a stick shift because you have to shift gears with your right hand. I did both, by the way. I can
Uh,
drive a car pretty good, and I
Good
can
for you.
drive a stick shift. Okay, but that was how left-hand dominant I was. So when I got to try out, and coach says do a layup on the right side. I mean, I could barely dribble right-handed,
Hmm.
much less do a right-handed layup successfully. So I was off the team, as were many other kids. And so the 12 kids who could actually play with both hands, that was the team, and that was who made the middle school team. And so I say that because you say a sport like basketball where being a righty or lefty has an advantage. In basketball, being able to play on both sides of your body has a significant advantage. And while in the NBA, much like the world, only 9 or 10% of NBA players are actually left-handed shooters, there's a lot of examples. I know Steph Curry practices a lot left-handed. Steph Curry actually is known to have one of the best left-handed layups in the game, even though he is a right-handed player. There's other players who followed Kobe Bryant, who was a pretty decent basketball player. Kobe, if you just go to YouTube, you can see lots of Kobe. Kobe would shoot often left-handed. He was a right-handed shooter, but he had the ability to shoot left-handed. And if you watch his old videos when he did shoot left-handed, he was often had the defender was on the right side of his body. So if you think you're trying to guard my right side because you know I'm a right-handed shooter, hey, guess what? I'm Kobe Bryant. I'll just throw it up with my left hand and make it. So there's a lot of advantages. I wouldn't say being a left-handed shooter is an advantage, but definitely in the sport of basketball, being able to shoot off of your left and right side, it's going to give you so much advantage in terms of being able to handle defenders.
I think soccer is the same way. So we'll throw soccer into that same explanation.
Perfect.
Insert stories here for soccer, right? I think in the same way, if I can put the ball on my left foot and stick it in the goal, that means you have to cover both sides. So we get
Yep.
that. Now, the interesting thing about this conversation with Rafa retiring, everybody's talking about lefties. Everybody's talking about a lefty that is a righty. Why does he play left-handed, but he's a right-handed person? Or are you just ambidextrous, as some might say? Some are not as dominant on one side or the other. I'm fairly right-handed dominant, but I worked a lot. Soccer, basketball. I did a lot with my left hand. My father insisted on it because he wanted me to be well-rounded. You don't want to be the guy with the one thing. Just
Mm-hmm.
don't have only one thing. You've got to do more than that. Now, jumping into the meat of what I'd love to talk about is tennis and golf. Golf less so because my shot doesn't affect you. Now, my theory on golf is I don't want to be a left-handed golfer because I'm never going to be a professional golfer. It's unlikely. And most people play golf for fun. And every once in a while, when I need to borrow a club because my 5 iron ends up in a lake, I can't borrow Ben Hesley's clubs. That's frustrating. So I want to be a right-handed golfer so I can borrow a club every once in a while when I need to. But lefty, you've got a story about Phil Mickelson that you know how he became a lefty. How did that play
Yeah. Yeah. Because Phil, as a lefty golfer, I had a hard, to your point, I had a hard time. My first set of golf clubs, and I'm an amateur golfer, but I should say I play golf, not a golfer. I think there's a
There you go.
difference.
Me too.
So I can play golf. But I play golf left-handed, and I couldn't hit a ball right-handed to save my life, probably, other than like a chip shot or maybe a putt. I have putted right-handed because you go places and they only have right-handed putters. But my first set of golf clubs was actually a lady set of clubs, but my aunt had because my uncle was a big golfer and he wanted his wife to play golf. She never touched the clubs, but she was left-handed, so he got her a set of lefty ladies clubs. That was my first set of golf clubs because that was the only when I was a kid, that was the only left-hand set of golf clubs my parents could find. And we got lucky that she had a pair, had a set rather than and she gave them to me. But finding a set of lefty clubs is not as hard as it was back then. I will tell you though that actually Greg Norman, and I'll use his example because he's the shark and we're bull sharks. So let's quickly use Greg before we talk about Phil. Greg is actually left-handed, but probably to your point, he plays golf right-handed. And the reason, I don't know the real reason, but I would assume the reason is because either a golf pro taught him that way because that's how everybody plays golf, and you have to play golf right-handed. I mean, I have friends that grew up playing tennis with who actually are left-handed people, but they played right-handed because they got a coach, a tennis pro. Can you believe this? A tennis pro that said, I don't know how to teach left-handed people, so you're going to have to get in that line and just hit the ball right-handed. And so they ended up being pretty decent. But I think to myself, these guys, I'm like, my God, these guys were like decent junior players. They might have been top of our field if they would have been allowed to play left-handed. But Greg, either somebody taught him that way because that's how you're, quote, supposed to play golf, or the case with the golf clubs, he couldn't find any lefty clubs, so the only set he had was righty, so he just learned to play righty. Phil, on the other hand, Phil Mickelson, he's a right-hander, but he plays left-handed, and the reason is because his dad taught him to play golf. And so when his dad was at the driving range teaching his son how to hit a golf ball, Phil's looking at his dad hit, and his dad's hitting right-handed. Well, he's just going to mirror that. So his swing just started mirroring what his father was doing, and the mirror image of his father was, of course, a lefty swing. I don't know how they got the clubs, but
That was going to be my question because I
I don't know
could
how they
pick
got the
this
clubs.
story apart pretty well.
I just know that's the story, and that Phil Mickelson learned to play left-handed because he just mirrored the golf swing of his father.
And by the way, to the coach who doesn't know how to teach lefties, it's actually easier because of that exact example.
Exactly. As a lefty coach I've often taught the serve the same way.
Yeah.
Teaching the serve, I just they
I
just
gotta I gotta look all funky trying to teach a serve to righties
yeah,
because I gotta show them with
mirror
my left hand.
right. It just mirror image, right?
Yeah.
Although some kids are copiers and some kids are mirrors. Some kids
Yep.
can mirror. Some kids will actually they'll like try to turn around and do the same stroke you have. So I have had to learn how to hit a right-handed serve and a right-handed forehand as well for demonstration purposes.
Yep.
But back to golf, a lot of the reason left-handed, I would argue left-handedness is a disadvantage for golfers is that a lot of the courses are designed for right-handed people.
Sure.
So you are playing a course, not a person, but the course itself is predominantly thought about, at least from the architect's perspective, the people designing the course, the people who are paying for the design of the course are usually right-handers, and therefore
90% right-handed.
they're
Yeah.
going to shift that focus to where the course is laid out more for a right-handed player.
Right. Now, tennis courts are all designed exactly the same and
Tennis
perfectly
court's a tennis
symmetrical.
court, as my coach used to say.
Tennis court is a tennis court. That is true. Now, do lefties have an advantage? We'll talk about the genetics, or can we actually turn a righty into a lefty last? But do lefties have an inherent advantage? And before I poison the well with my point of view, it's your show. Ben, do you think you have an advantage? All things being equal, if I'm as good as you are, you and I are the same. We're the same height. We're the same ability. You're a lefty. I'm a righty. Who wins?
I would say this. First of all, growing up, I was always told that I had an advantage as a lefty because all the big points were played in the ad court. And as a left-handed player, my serve was more dominant in the ad court. Now, my argument to that was to get to those big points, you have to get to the ad point, you got to play a deuce point.
And more points are played on the deuce side.
Right. And the right-handed player, yeah, the game starts on the right side. The point to get to the quote big point is on the right side. So I would people ask me like, who has the advantage, and we talk about doubles, like who should, all things being equal, who should play the deuce side. And I hear this from the junior ranks. I also get a lot of questions from adult players like this. I always say put your stronger returner on the right side.
Yes.
Because
lefty or righty doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, but just if you're clearly a stronger returner, put yourself on the right side, and in theory, you win all those deuce points. Then your weaker partner is always at an advantage.
Just got to win one.
Yeah. Right. So as a lefty, I felt the same way. I'm like, why do you guys say I have such an advantage when there's so many more points played on the right side, and the deuce points are played on the right side, where arguably the righty server would have an advantage. Now, I will tell you that as more points are played through the ad court, and this is something that Roger Federer was big about, and a reason why Roger struggled a bit against Nadal is Nadal being a lefty. If you watch Roger play, much like a lot of players, we're trying to steer, if it's righty versus righty, we're trying to steer that point, regardless of where the serve is served to. We're trying to draw that point to the ad court and get an inside-out forehand, punishing the backhand of the righty player. So you watch a lot of Feds points from the baseline. He's trying to get that inside out forehand through the ad court and hitting and punishing your backhand. Now, obviously, he hits that ball to Rafa. Rafa's waving with his forehand over there. And the same to me as a lefty. My advantage was exactly that. My game, I served and volleyed a lot, but when I did play the baseline, my game was going to be to get you into an. Doesn't matter where the serve comes from. I'm going to try to get you into an ad court, cross court rally and
Yep.
just beat you to death with my forehand versus your backhand. So to that end, yes, it was an advantage.
Yeah, and I think the advantage is I give it a 10% advantage. And you won't have to go very far to figure out where that number comes from. Number one, you don't play lefties, but less than 10% of the time.
Yeah.
And lefties happen to be more creative types. I would bet there's less than an even number. I don't think it's a 1-to-1 relationship. If there are 10% lefties in the world, I don't think there are 10% of sporting people because I think sporting people are more likely to be righty. But that's a personality trait. Now, in this case, I think you have a 10% advantage. The ball moves a little bit different. It's just something we don't practice against as often because 90% of coaches are right handed. 90% of my practice partners are right handed. You just see it more often.
Yeah.
So, whether it should or shouldn't be an advantage, I think it is. And I call it a 10% inherent advantage. And that's just me saying whether it's ad side, deuce side, you can hit that ball sideways to my backhand. If I'm Rafa and you're Roger, your backhand can't handle my slider. How are you going to break me? It's just going to be unlikely. Now, as a two-handed backhand guy, I think that advantage goes down a little bit because I can do a little bit more against your lefty slider. But in this case, can I take my son? Let's use him as an advantage. My son's 2. He is righty. He's a right-handed kid. There's nothing we can do about it. He's right-handed dominant, but every once in a while he likes to whack things with the left hand. Can I turn him into a lefty whether he likes it or not? Now, I'll put in the caveat before you answer. There is an argument that says Roger Federer is a great example. Had such control and such touch and such feel with his hands, with his right hand. If you'd have made him a lefty, he would have been a worse tennis player because he wasn't naturally able to do it. You'd be manufacturing something instead of allowing it to develop naturally. Is there an argument to be had there?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you try to manufacture something, you could set yourself up for failure. Could work beautifully. Who knows, right? Phil Mickelson's case, it could work beautifully.
It's
Phil
pretty good.
never reached number one, by the way. There still to this day has never been a number one ranked PGA golfer.
Oh,
So just FYI, a number one ranked left-hander. So
yeah.
Phil
Okay.
got to number two, and I think Bubba Watson got to number two. But anyways, let's go back to tennis. I think with any sport, doesn't matter if it's tennis, baseball, whatever, trying to make your kids something that they are inherently not is going to be a huge challenge, right? There's the more I learn about the connection between the mind and body, there's so many neurological and physiological factors that play into just somebody being a human being that it could be very difficult for us to manufacture and say, I'm going to make my kid left-handed because XYZ, right? We don't know, right? We have no idea. I can say I'm gonna make my kid a left-hander so he can be a left-handed pitcher in the major leagues. Well,
There you go.
I have the chances of him making the majors is so small to begin with. Plus, I'm gonna like make him be a side of the body that he may not naturally be, just so he can. I mean, that seems a bit Mike Agassi nutty to me, to be honest with you. So like, I'm gonna go play. My 6 month old is gonna play. That kind of goes to. I mean, I guess he had something going because his kids ended up being the best doubles team of all time, arguably. But you had the Wayne Bryant taping the ping pong paddle to Mike and Bob's hand, have them hit balls. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he. I mean, Wayne. I mean, Bob's the lefty, right? So Bob's the lefty, Mike's the righty. Maybe he did that on purpose. I don't know. It worked out that the lefty righty combo worked for them being the
Pretty
best
good team.
team of all time, right? But I just think there's so much that goes into it. The best thing you can do for your kid is rather than trying to make them one way or the other, is just let them be. A lot of people think I made my son the way I made him because he bats left-handed and he throws right-handed, which is a fantastic combination for
At shortstop.
baseball because a lot of coaches love lefty hitters. You love having lefty hitters in your lineup.
Yep.
And you're being right-handed allows you to be eligible to play all the positions in the field. So, you know, a baseball field is predominantly set up for right-handed players in the field.
Yep.
And so that's why as a lefty, I had to always play first base or the outfield because that was pretty, as I got up in the levels, that's pretty much all there was left for me as a true left-handed player. I didn't make him that way. My daughter bats left-handed. I didn't make her that way. I don't know where they got it. They just with their little Tykes T and their plastic bat. That's the side they hit from.
Watching their father do it might have a little bit.
Probably,
I want to be like that.
probably. And then but I throw left hand. They both throw right handed. You know, so they both
That
throw
one they're
right.
not standing next to you learning. So I wonder how much of this is nurture to say, okay, playing catch, you're over there. I might actually mirror you. If I'm righty, you're lefty. I put the glove on the same hand that I'm looking at.
I don't know. I mean Turner. Much to your son, I mean, from when he's sitting in the crib, he was throwing the
He's
ball. He
right-handed.
was
Okay,
throwing not a ball. It was
you're
whatever,
right.
like the little stuffed
The
animal,
stuffed animal toss,
across
right?
the room. You know.
Yeah.
So, but there's just a lot of there it some of it's nurture, but there is a lot of nature. There's a lot of neurological and physiological things going on with kids. And the best thing we can do as their parents and their coaches is to have them learn to do things off both sides of the body. That's why tennis is such a great sport for kids because you sort of have to do
Both
that,
sides.
right? You have to play off both sides of the body, regardless of whether you're playing right-handed or left-handed.
Yeah, and that's kind of your point with this whole conversation is whether it's genetic, whether you're trying to manufacture something, whether the kid is naturally righty or lefty, develop both sides, work on that symmetry with the child's development.
Yeah, and it's only going to make them better. It's only going to benefit them as an athlete down the road. If they decide to play left-handed, play left-handed. If they decide to play right-handed, play right-handed. Whatever works best for them, and it can be sport dependent. You know, my wife is a great example. She gets in the batting cage. She's going to hit right-handed. We go play catch. She's going to throw right-handed. She plays tennis right-handed, but yet she shoots a basketball left-handed, and she was a high school basketball player. And she'll tell you that she feels a lot of the reason she shoots. So she played tennis before she played basketball, and from having to toss the ball with her left hand to serve, she feels like that gave her strength and coordination with her left hand. So when she went to basketball, she, for whatever reason, just felt more comfortable putting the ball up with her left hand. So there's such an advantage to working both sides of the body. You know, can your kid catch with either hand? Can they cross their midline and catch? So can I cross to my right side and catch with my left? Can I cross to my left side and catch with my right? Those are such advantages and just basic catching skills on both sides of the body that are only going to benefit your kid down the road with whatever that they choose to do.
And be able to do a layup on both sides. It's not that hard. It'd take you a few days of practice, and you wouldn't you
You
would
have
not make
to,
the
or
middle
you will
school team.
not. Please, I have my kid is going through it right now. I went through it. If you can't do a layup on both sides with either hand, right side with the right hand, left side with the left hand, just go out and try it. You'll see why there's an advantage to doing it that way. I've had people arguing with it, like, why would you do that? I'm like, well, go do it, and you'll see why shooting with the outside hand makes a lot more sense in shooting a basketball. Only going to make you better and help you make your middle school, maybe even high school team.
There you go. I like it. Ben, thank you so much. This has been Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hesley. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next week.
Hey, work both sides, everybody.